The disaster known as The Acolyte is finally airing on Disney Plus. Episode 1, 2, and 3 premiered last week, and right now this is going to be my review for episode 3. Now, for me, Star Wars ended in 2005, 1977 to 2005. That is Star Wars, and that is over. Star Wars is over. Whatever Disney is doing with the Star Wars name, the Star Wars brand now, is not Star Wars. It is an abomination. And yes, that's correct. The Acolyte is an abomination, a deformation of the Star Wars franchise and brand. It's taken its story and mythic integrity into agenda, propaganda, social political messaging. It's disgusting. It's an artistic vandalism to the artistic storytelling of the original 6 epic Star Wars movies. This is exactly why this show will fail. I usually do theme parks here, but this is going to be a new segment on my channel as I slowly add more pop culture. It's going to be movie talk with Valientes. I know Acolyte's not a movie, but I'm a longtime Star Wars fan, and I have to expose the stupidity and the disaster that this show is. This review is going to have spoilers if you haven't watched the show, just to let you know. But if anything, I'm actually hoping that I save you from watching it, saving you from suffering through this, as I couldn't even watch the whole thing all the way through completely. I had to skip some parts because there's a lot of just bland, boring stuff, characters walking. So on a technical standpoint, the dialogue is really bad here. The pacing, the editing is bad. Just like previous Star Wars shows, there's a lot of lingering shots of characters just walking around in dead spaces and just looking at each other awkwardly. Moments between dialogue, just long pauses that should be edited out. This is not how Star Wars should be. This is not how any kind of Star Wars media, especially live action show or movie, should be. You need to have that quick pacing, that sense of adventure and fun, and none of this here in this show has any of that. The lightsabers have been neutered in Disney Star Wars, and you're telling me that Carrie-Anne Moss, Trinity, aka Trinity, died because of a kitchen knife when you have other characters surviving in Disney Star Wars with a lightsaber impalement? Yeah, they just completely have neutered the lightsaber. They don't know how to even use the lightsaber in storytelling. You know, people critique George Lucas because of the dialogue that he had in the prequels and even the originals, but the dialogue here is just really bad, and it doesn't even compare to anything compared to his bad dialogue, which in many ways his bad dialogue in his movies actually build his characters and give his characters some personality at least. In the case of this, it's so generic and so bland, and it doesn't give the characters any kind of personality, and it sounds like a 5-year-old could have written something better. It's really that bad. Another thing that just seems really off, it seems like Lesley Headland used this show as a platform for her therapy, because she had mentioned something about her sister in her life in previous interviews. And it just seems like she's using this as a way to let things out in a multi-billion-dollar franchise with a budget of supposedly 180 million. She basically put all her angst and all her therapy sessions here into this show. It's basically a corpse now, and she's basically defiling this corpse by putting in her personal angst into it and her trauma into the show with these made up characters that are supposed to have to do something with her life. And it's really bad. The whole idea with the witches and everything like that, really not Star Wars at all. It doesn't fit into Star Wars. There is lore in the expanded universe that then was expanded in the Clone Wars under Dave Filoni with the Witches of Dathomir. Me personally, I was never a fan of the Witches of Dathomir. They actually did make more sense than whatever is presented here, in that they're on their own planet, then they have their own beliefs. They do not really wield the Force. They use this sort of magic. And I believe that even if George Lucas had brought him into the story, if he had his way with the sequels, for example, I feel he would have definitely not done something like this, which is basically lesbian witches in space. They're also just negating a lot of things from from the prequels in terms of Anakin being the chosen one and how he was special in in the way he was born, in his virgin birth, that he was born without a father. And now here lesbian witches can do this with no problem whatsoever, and they call the Force the thread, and it's basically Lesley Helen's fantasy, feminist fantasy being put into this franchise. They don't respect what came before. They don't respect George because they are not capable or creative enough to create something on top of that without disrespecting what was there before and actually adding onto it and making it better. Instead, they want to change everything to their ideologies and what they like, even sexually, and it's disgusting. And the fact that you have these children, these kids, and these storylines with these lesbian witches, the whole thing is really perverse, in my opinion. Just talking about it makes me sick, because none of this kind of stuff, none of this kind of content or type of ideas belongs in Star Wars. Them also trying to antagonize the Jedi here, it has started since The Last Jedi. Since The Last Jedi with Rian Johnson, he's been trying to antagonize the Jedi. These people at Lucasfilm, this clique of people, this posse, Kathleen Kennedy's posse, are just a lot of degenerates, in my opinion. And they're the ones responsible in bringing out all this crap, all of these ideas and messages into these Star Wars shows, including the sequel trilogy. And they just have a lot of fetishes and weird fantasies that don't belong in this franchise. And these are the people that are in charge of Disney Star Wars, in charge at Lucasfilm. And unfortunately, a lot of us have to really move on. We need to stop supporting them in terms of the merchandise, in terms of watching this stuff through Disney Plus. There are other ways to watch this. We need to stop supporting them in that sense, because this is not going to get better under Lucasfilm's current staff watch. This is not going to change whatsoever. The only way this is going to change is if they clean house. If Bob Iger goes and he fires Kathleen Kennedy, which means in turn a lot of her people are going to leave, and whoever he places in her place, hopefully they change everything, but it needs to change for the better. Also, yes, Dave Filoni is very much in charge of letting this episode leave like this. Dave Filoni is basically a male feminist at this point. He approved this. There's already like stuff online on Twitter that shows and proves that his wife is into like witchcraft and things like that. And I wouldn't even be surprised if she was the one that kind of told Lesley Headland and Filoni, hey, we should really push more for the witches in this whole show. So that's basically what we got here, and it makes sense at this point. The people that are surrounding Dave Filoni, and Dave Filoni's talks and speeches and ideas behind Star Wars do not match George Lucas's. People put him on a high pedestal because he trained under George Lucas. Dave Filoni was hired to be a showrunner for the Clone Wars, but he was not hired to be George Lucas's basically successor. He was never George Lucas's successor. The guy's not that creative. He was just hired to be a showrunner, and he was taught the ways of Star Wars to him so that he can make a good cartoon Clone Wars show, not so that he can take over Star Wars. But because George Lucas left, everybody has said, oh, Dave Filoni is a successor to George Lucas. They have propped him up, and really stupid fans have propped him up too, into like this Star Wars savior. Not even close at all. And that's his fault too, that this has been released, and he's also to blame. Who knows when this Star Wars franchise corpse will stop getting defiled by these weirdos and sick people at Lucasfilm, and the sick people that Kathleen Kennedy hires, like Lesley Headland. That was the worst person you could have gotten for this. This is basically a therapy session for her. She doesn't respect George Lucas and his world and the universe and the rules in that world and the characters and the Jedi and the Sith and everything established in that world, and the Force especially. She doesn't care about that. She just cares about her ideologies, her egotistical like mindset. She wants to have that in a show. and she does not have the creative freedom to do something original, an original story that would have all of that, because nobody's gonna watch it. Nobody's gonna watch a movie about a lesbian witch cult creating babies out of nothing with no fathers. No, they had to get the start. They had to put it in something that already existed. That's a multi-billion-dollar franchise like Star Wars, for them to have any chance to shove their ideas and their trauma onto the world. Because nobody would ever watch an original idea like that without the name Star Wars on it. And unfortunately, they've done it with Star Wars. And this is not going to get any better. This is supposed to be eight episodes. We have 5 episodes left. This is gone. This is like literally at the bottom of the pit. I don't know how bad or worse it can get, but at this point, it's probably going to get worse. I don't see it really getting to what fans really want anytime soon, mainly because the people that are in charge at Lucasfilm, until there is a mass fire of all these people. Kathleen Kennedy is booted out. All of her henchmen, cronies in there are booted out, and they bring in people that are creative and that actually care about Star Wars. But at this point, for me, I'm moving on, and I'm gonna just celebrate the classic Star Wars, which at this point is now episodes 1 through 6. That for me is the original Star Wars. There's a lot of stuff to compound and like to talk about that time of Star Wars when George Lucas was in charge. Don't lose hope that you don't have any good Star Wars. There is good Star Wars, but it's definitely not under Disney. So that's going to be my review. Thank you again for watching. Stay tuned to this channel to have more movie stuff on this theme park channel. Slowly building it more to like pop culture stuff. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.